Good morning. You're listening to Retake Our Democracy, a 30-minute weekly show that airs at 8:30 a.m. each Saturday morning on KSFR 101.1 FM, your Santa Fe public radio station. I'm Paul Gibson, the host of Retake Our Democracy, and today I'm speaking with Representative Kristina Ortez, New Mexico State Rep for District 42. We'll get to Kristina after a few short announcements. Before we get started, I also want to acknowledge that we are conducting this show on stolen Tewa land and to thank our Tewa neighbors for being such good stewards of the land. I also want to remind you that as part of our series on New Mexico Democratic House members over the past 6 weeks, I have spoken with Andrea Romero, House Rep for District 46, Susan Herrera, House Rep for District 41, Representative candidate Rena Sapansky, and Representative Roger Montoya. And we complete that cycle with our conversation today with House Rep Kristina Ortez. It is worth noting that Montoya, Romero, Herrera, and Kristina all face primary challenges from centrist corporate-backed challengers who also enjoyed financial support from a newly formed corporate-funded PAC, New Mexico Working Together. So four of our progressive legislators are facing some stiff challenges. Last week, we took a break from the legislature and spoke with Eric Olivas. He's the progressive candidate for Bernalillo County Commission in District 5. This is a key race, as while the Bernalillo County Commission is technically 4-1 Democrat, two of those Democrats are dinos, Democrats in name only, and vote regularly with the sole GOP on the commission. And so nothing good gets done. Eric is a refreshing voice, and our interview is an excellent introduction as to why this race is so important, not just for Albuquerque and Bernalillo County, but for the entire state. If you are driving around and miss any of today's show, you can watch the full YouTube recording of this show and any prior show, including any of the interviews with the legislators, by going to retakeourdemocracy.org and clicking on the Retake on the Radio button on the right side of the homepage. You'll find the YouTube recordings of all of our previous shows there. With the 2022 regular and special sessions over, Retake is shifting focus to the primary election. As part of that work, we are identifying races where either solid incumbents are being challenged by moderate or conservative Democrats, or where an incumbent Dem who is being challenged by a more progressive Dem. We will be announcing the list of races on which we are focusing very soon. In fact, they will be up by the time this airs. So go to retakeourdemocracy.org and click on Elections Central in the menu bar, and you'll be able to see our list of candidates, and you'll see Kristina's name among them. Retake is also getting ready for the interim hearings, which will begin soon. Retake is working with allies to support their interim hearing strategies, conducting supporting research, and initiating dialogue with key legislators on the issues Retake will be focused upon in 2022-2023. Stay tuned, as there will be both actions you can take in both the primaries and the interim hearings. If you want to keep current on interim hearings and elections, you should click on Get Action Alerts on the Retake homepage. We send out alerts during the legislative session almost every day, sometimes more than every day. But each alert includes information about a bill that we're supporting, including speaking points and a summary, and contact information for the legislators that will be voting on that bill. We also give you information about how you can either attend in person or attend from home. So this is a good way to stay in touch. When we're not in a legislative session, we have, maybe once every other week an alert, usually about some kind of commission hearing or something. If you want to, so you should definitely go to retakeourdemocracy.org and click on the Get Actions alerts. Another way to stay in touch is to participate in our monthly huddles. They're generally the second Wednesday of the month from 6 to 7:30, although our May huddle will be on May 4th from 6 to 7:30. That's obviously the first Wednesday of the month. We had to move it because Roxanne and I will be in California the week of May 10th to 17th to attend our daughter's graduation from med school. Yay! And boy, does she deserve support for that. What a heroic job. We've been witness to what med school students go through, and it's like torture. And her reward for that is $300,000 of debt. And she's a doctor. So we'll see. Seems like a good trade-off. The description of the huddle and link to register appears near the top of a page that you can get to by going to retakeourdemocracy.org and clicking on the actions and events page in the menu bar. And then you'll have to click to register, and you have to register to participate. And we've changed a bit the structure of our huddles. They used to be just very informal discussions of our strategies, either legislative or election. But now we're bringing in content specialists each week, each huddle, and they sort of facilitate a topic, a conversation where they have expertise on a topic that's very germane to us. Last week, we had Tom Solomon from 350 New Mexico talking to us about how New Mexico could make the transition to a cleaner economy and wean ourselves of our reliance on gas and oil. It was a really interesting conversation. Hope to see you at our next huddle. Enough announcements. Welcome, Kristina. Thanks for making time for this conversation. Should we get started? Yeah.
That sounds great. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You're not muted.
Excellent. Okay.
I always like to let our guests introduce themselves. So how about you start by telling us a bit about yourself and how you landed in Taos and how you got involved in policy and politics in general, and how that led you to serving as District 42 rep.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks everyone listening. I'm so thrilled to be on here today. So I'm Kristina Ortez. I'm originally from the central San Joaquin Valley of California. I'm from a small agricultural town called Madera. I have two daughters who are both in school in second grade and fifth grade. They go to a lovely little school here in Taos. I am also the executive director of the Taos Land Trust, where I've been for 8 years now. I just celebrated my 8th anniversary there on April 1st. I've been involved in some kind of political activity for a while now, for about 20 years. I've been an environmental advocate for years on public lands, clean water, on air quality issues, starting from my time in California. So when I moved here to New Mexico in 2008, I moved to Albuquerque and worked at the Sierra Club on some programs to get kids connected with the outdoors and to get our state to invest in outdoor learning, outdoor equity. So I like to think of it as the very, very tiny seedling beginnings of the outdoor equity program that my colleague Representative Rubio introduced some years ago. That's now extremely successful. So I had some kind of connection with advocacy at the state level in California on clean water and here in New Mexico for a while, but it wasn't really until a fateful meeting at a women's leadership group in Taos that I embarked on this whole idea of being an elected official, and that was in September of 2019 when our beloved Senator Carlos Cisneros passed. And we met and we're talking about what we can do to get women in office. And I finally listened to the call. For many, many years, folks had said you really should run for office, and I said no, not the time. And I think women are asked like 7 times to do that before they even consider it. So I considered it.
So how did you wind up becoming appointed?
So I sought the nomination from 4 different counties to be appointed to that position by the governor. I was nominated by Santa Fe County and Los Alamos County, and the governor chose the representative then, Roberto Bobby Gonzalez, and I think that made a lot of sense. He had a lot of experience, and I decided to run for that open house seat. And that's what happened. And that was a pretty historic year for women, 2020. So many women were elected into office in Taos County that year and all around the state. I was elected for the first time. We've never had a woman before in this district seat, and two women at the county commission level. So it was a really wonderful year for women in office.
Yes, it is. I think the Democratic caucus became a majority women after that
Exactly.
year. That's a great thing. And we could use even more women
Not
in there.
not the Senate, not the Senate,
No,
but
no, not the Senate, not the
we're
Senate.
getting there.
That's still an old boys network. Um, yeah, so can you tell us just a little bit about your district? What's the boundaries and what are some of the
Sure.
key issues that your constituents um, find important?
My district is most of Taos County. There are slivers of Taos County that are in District 41, which is right now represented by Susan Herrera, and District 40, which is represented by Roger Montoya. There's a few precincts in the southern part that are part of H District 40, and most of the west side of the county, including a little bit of Arroyo Hondo, most of Arroyo Hondo, a little bit of Arroyo Seco in Susan Herrera's district. So my district goes all the way up to the Colorado border. Costilla, Amalia, Cuesta, those communities are in my district, down to the Penasco area, Penasco and Vadito, and a couple of little small communities down at the southern end of the district. And then it goes over to yeah, the other side of so outside of Taos County, Colfax County, that's all District 41, 40. So the biggest issues I think affecting my district right now really kind of is a sort of response to COVID and what's happened, the great transformation that's happened in this county. Lots of people have moved here from other places because Taos is beautiful. We've got mountains, we've got huge, beautiful views. We saw a lot of transplants here from all over the country, which has driven our housing prices to the point of it's untenable. So Tauseños cannot live here anymore; they can't afford it. So
Seems
I
like
think that's
Santa
the
Fe.
biggest issue. It's very much like Santa Fe, and I think we held off for a while, but now we're in a really difficult position for our community. We're losing talent. 11 teachers have moved to Taos County to work in the district, both the municipal school district and the charter schools, and had to leave because they could not find a place to live in 2022, 2021 and 2022. So I think this is the biggest issue that we're facing, along with, I think the issues that are deeply impacted by poverty and trauma, including our behavioral health crisis, not helped by the fact that people are lacking some stability. So we need major investments in behavioral health. We need detox, which we don't have here. We're getting hopefully very soon. But we don't have it right now. I think those are the biggest issues. But of course, everybody also cares about, land and water and having enough water to have food security and I think, to accommodate the crazy growth that we're experiencing right now.
Mhm.
I'm praying that the winds will die down. I'm praying that we'll get a little bit of moisture. It's not in our forecast. We got some really late winter snows, which are helping our forests, I believe, but it's a pretty scary time.
Yes, it is. Gosh, we have friends who live down in Rio Doso, and that place is just really torched.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
awful.
unfortunately, it looks like it's our future.
Yeah.
Um, can you tell us, you've got a big, diverse district. How do you stay engaged with your constituents?
It's a real challenge, I have to admit. I have a full-time job. We are an unpaid legislature, so I'm not sure if you're ever going to have a show on modernizing the legislature, but I am here for it if when you do. It's not easy. We don't have staff during the year outside of session, so I really rely on the incredible House staff that help us in the chief clerk's office and in the speaker's office. So when a question comes in, if I can answer it myself, I will, and I do. I spend a lot of time on the phone. If not, I'll ask our some of the support staff for the speaker and the clerk to help me accommodate those questions. But as a rep, there are a lot of questions ranging from unemployment to when is this tax rebate check going to come into our mailboxes? How can I apply if I'm a non-filer? Those are the kinds of questions I get. I get a lot of questions about acequia. I'm getting a lot of questions about infrastructure from our mutual domestics. So it really is, I think, a full-time job answering constituent questions and trying to really, implement the programs that we're supporting through our $8.4 billion budget, and all the laws that we just recently passed. It's not easy.
Yeah, I think I hear where you're going to go with one of the questions I have in the second half of the show about how would we reform the legislature.
No, I'm ready for it.
Okay. You've been involved in a couple of sessions now. What would you identify as your greatest accomplishments in those sessions?
Oh, I think no question the passage and eventual signing of the Community Energy Efficiency Development Block Grant is the thing I'm most proud of. That was the bill that I tried to get passed last year. It was a part of a bigger utility affordability bill. But what this program will do, and this fund that's being housed at the Energy, Minerals, Natural Resources Department, is it would provide some funding, block grant funding to political subdivisions, municipalities, tribes, to invest in energy efficiency for low-income New Mexicans. So, that's a really remarkable thing. Low-income New Mexicans pay I just crazy is really the only word, a crazy amount of money for their utilities, especially their electricity and their gas bills. So this will allow you know, uh, folks to have lower utility bills, and I think, and in effect, we'll have lower emissions because we're using less energy.
Okay, well, yeah, that was one of our bills that we supported, and we were very
And
happy
thank
to
you for
see that
that.
get through. Yes.
Thank you for
Um,
that.
we need to take a quick break here to remind our listeners that they're listening to KSFR. It's our public radio station, and it's in times like this, full of disinformation, misinformation, and social media and traditional media, that a rock solid news source, whether it's radio or television, you can't really find it on television, so you got to find it on radio, and KSFR is solidly that radio station. And it's not just Retake Our Democracy and the culture and the music that you can listen to. Their news broadcasts are solid. They broadcast Democracy Now, which is Amy Goodman and her television show as well. And so it's just a great radio station, and they run on volunteer moderators like myself, but they also have a staff of engineers and producers, and those people need to get paid. And so if you have some loose change, 10 or 20 bucks, I'd say after you listen to this radio show, go to ksfr.org, click on the donate button, and whatever you can afford, view it as your ticket for admission to some really good programming. Okay, thank you for doing that too. So you just mentioned the SEED program as one of your great accomplishments. What's been your biggest disappointment?
Oh, well, there's two things, or two categories. The bills that I introduced that didn't get a message, including the amendments to um, the Natural Heritage Act, Conservation Act. Sorry about that. I really wanted that to go through. We're missing out on millions and millions of dollars from at the federal level to invest in land protection here in our state. We didn't get a message from the governor, so that didn't get onto the floor. It did pretty well the year before with that bill, but we didn't have the time for it to make it over to the Senate side. It was passed by the House. I mean, I think there were a lot of bills that I really cared about that I wasn't co-sponsoring, but that I really pushed. I pushed for the clean fuel standards. That was a very sad, that died a sad death on the last hours of the session. I don't even know what time it was anymore. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Followed by the Voting Rights Act, which I spoke on the floor about. I was very, very disappointed that while it passed the House, we didn't have enough time for that to
You had
get
time. You
get
just had a
concurrence.
state senator who decided to talk for 3 hours about baseball and the history of New Mexico, through a
Yeah,
very jaded white male perspective. It was a
I'm not
mis.
sure what people are afraid of, Paul. I don't know why people are afraid of folks getting the right and access to vote to make voting easier. I mean, I know we know what they're afraid of, but it boggles my mind that this was the the hill folks were willing to die on. It's insane to me, frankly.
Well, we make it so easy for them to do it with the whole ger- um, um, filibuster process. And I
Yeah.
remember one of the first hearings I sat in about 5, 6 years ago. I sat next to Damon Eli, and partway through, I said, "Can't somebody make them stop?" Because all they were doing in this committee hearing was ask the same question over and over and over again, getting the same answer over and over and again. And at one point, I think Senator Chasey said, "Would you like me to just tape record this so I could just replay it for you?" But it was
She's pretty
it's just
sharp. I love it. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah. But it was just I asked him why can't you do something about it, and he said that you'll recall when Susanna was the governor, that was our only tool for stopping some very, very horrific bills from getting through, and death penalty bills and
Right,
bills
right.
to make abortion completely illegal, et cetera, et cetera. And so he wasn't defending it, but he was saying, you got to be careful for what you do to make reforms, because you have to live with them if you're in the minority as well.
I
And
think that's a brilliant, yep. Hmm.
my perspective on that is, if you get the votes to have the control of the legislative body, you ought to be able to try and implement your agenda, period.
Right,
Otherwise, what's the election about,
right.
and so when you have a constituency that has said, I want Voting Rights Act passed, and then you have a minority senator stand up with 3 hours left in the session and just talk for the entire 3 hours on nonsense, it's just ridiculous. And so it
It
stifled the
yeah.
people's will.
Yeah, I think it's an embarrassment of our democracy when that can happen. But I will say this about the tools. I think that it's important to know the tools, and know what tools exist. And I think those two folks you mentioned, Representatives Eli and Chair Chasey, are brilliant. They really understand the tools. I'm very sad to see Representative Eli go. They know what tools they are given and how to use them. Chair Chasey, was brilliant in our government committee when it came to some of the bills that were coming around, and made some fantastic motions that kept things moving through the process, when the filibuster was when a filibuster was in danger of threatening, I believe it was the clean fuel standards. So it was a beautiful thing to see, and I'm really sad that Representative Eli is leaving. But it's important to know what tools you have and how to use them, when to use them.
So now that we're talking about the legislative process, I'm going to throw you the question you want to answer most. What would you do to reform the legislature to make it more representative and democratic and possible to actually serve in?
It was a very sad week. This last session was pretty sad. That last week was very sad. The last couple days, when we found out that so many of our members were leaving. Some were retiring because they'd been there for a long time, but there were a number of women of color who were leaving the House because of the way the system is structured. It does not work for working families, and I think there's a lot that we can do to make our House and our Senate, and state government more family friendly, more friendly to women, more just modernized with the way we do work now, more flexible and proactive. So there are a number of women who are working together in concert to really look at the ways in which we can modernize. Of course, legislative pay is one of them, and it's important. We want to be able to have folks like me, folks like Kay Bunka, who have to juggle a full-time job, raising their children, and doing this for free, basically. Yes, I know we get a per diem. That per diem really truly barely covers, unless you're very well connected or you have your own money, it barely covers the cost of lodging and transportation if you're going back and forth to see your family, and food. it barely covers it. So, we really need to think about how we can accommodate those voices, working voices. I think that's one. So let's look at legislative pay. And I'm not set on a salary. There are some of my colleagues who think, $120,000. There are others who say that we know that'll never fly. But what does 30 to 50 look like, for a part-time legislature? That's one. I think it's crazy that we are voting and voting on and building a budget that is, in the billions, 8.4 billion in 30 days. I mean, I know that those budgets are created over the span of a year. That's a pretty opaque process. You can be a part of those meetings, but not every member has the ability to really weigh in on that. So I think that we really should be looking at
I've had
longer
Matthew,
sessions.
I've had Matthew McQueen tell me he's been in the legislature for like 10 years and he has no idea how to get a bill funded. He has no idea. So it is
Yeah,
opaque. And
it's
too
pretty
much
opaque.
power held by the Senate Finance and the House Appropriations Finance Committees.
Yeah, that's I think that is correct. I agree with my chair on that for sure. But I'll tell you, this week and last week I spent probably 20 to 30 hours talking with constituents, trying to get them connected with the right programs, answering their questions about their acequias and these tax rebate checks. This is, you know, this is the kind of thing that really makes up the rest of the time. I love doing it. It is my job, it is my duty, but all that time, that's unpaid. I don't have anybody to help me with that except for the one or two people in the house and the clerk's office to help with some of those problems. But I don't have a staff member during the year to help me log the constituent calls, help me respond to them. That's something that I have to do on my own time. I'm glad to do it, but it cuts into the job that pays my mortgage. Right. So
Right.
that's something that we have to really consider as well as having staff throughout the year. So I'm thinking about legislative pay, thinking about staff, thinking about the restructuring of the session so that it can accommodate and it can really reflect the decisions that need to be made throughout the year. We've had now more special sessions since I have been in office, more special sessions than regular sessions. They're not as long, of course, but we've had three of them because we couldn't do the work in the time that we were allotted because it's not enough time.
Right. Right. Well, it's especially frustrating when you're watching a hearing and a legislator comes into the hearing and just walks in and goes, "Okay, what am I voting on?" And he or she hasn't been part of the discussion at all. And it's not a knock on that legislator. He's maybe in another committee presenting a bill being
Presenting, right?
sponsored. And so he has to be there. But if you could stretch out the legislature so for a longer period of time, you could prevent those kinds of scheduling conflicts. And it
Right,
just needs
right.
to be more deliberate. You can't
Yeah.
have budget bills and other bills that are 300 pages long and expect people to digest that and vote on it in an hour, or
I
whatever.
I I agree. We don't have enough time to get, to really delve into the meat of a bill. But I will also say this. It's not healthy for it's
We're out of time. We're going to get back to Kristina in just a minute, but we don't even have time to give her an opportunity to tell you where can you just give us your website address, Kristina, so that people can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. You can find out more information at Ortez, Ortez, the number four, NM.com. That's Ortez for New Mexico, or Ortez for number four, NM.com.
Okay, we got to really cut out now because I ran way over. I was so interested in the conversation. I didn't follow the timer. Thank you for being with us. We're going to continue this conversation in just a minute for the YouTube folks. KSFR is going to kill me. I'm really supposed to stick to 28 minutes, and that was 29:24. And so they have a difficult time making that fit within their time frame because there's intros and stuff before we get started. Anyway,
Sure.
we're back, and we were talking with Kristina Ortez, and it was such an interesting conversation. I overshot the radio show, but we're back and we're going to continue the conversation. We've been talking about the kinds of changes that might be necessary in the legislature. The governor certainly made a statement about a change she'd like to see by vetoing the junior bill allocations. Do you think she had a valid point in vetoing the bill? And if so, how could she have made that point without ruffling so many feathers? To what projects had you dedicated your funds, and were they fully restored?
Um, I I don't think she had a point in vetoing the junior bill. Um, I understand that there had potentially been some discussions last year about the way this bill was structured, but in my mind, and in the work that was done to put the projects that I wanted to support, into place, that there was a lot of vetting that had been done. We don't have a lot of opportunity to influence the budget process, and this is one way. We've got our capital outlay, that's for capital projects, but these are for programs. You can't just invest in capital. You've got to invest in programs as well. And I think this is a really lovely way to get those programs at the state and local level supported, programs that exist already in state government agencies. So the programs that I supported, where it was to support the horse sanctuaries all around the state. I think that's a really beautiful thing, and I've supported that program for a couple of years. I supported some media literacy supports. Really important to have informed young people around media. We are inundated with images, with social media, and our children, I have children, are having a hard time navigating what's true and what isn't. So this media literacy, I think, is really critical to have an informed electorate and to have an informed citizenry. I supported the Acequia Community Ditch Fund at the Office of the State Engineer, so more money for our acequias. I also supported a really amazing program at the 8th Judicial District here in Taos County, that a program manager position that would support the wellness court, the DV court, the drug court. So that person is going to be looking for grants to really get some more support for folks who are going through the system and who need some help. And I think that's a really incredible program. I also supported a program at UNM Taos for our Career and Technical Services Department. I love this amazing college here that we have in northern New Mexico. UNM Taos serves a lot of folks, and so this is a program that will serve them. My programs were all restored within the programs that I supported were restored in the junior bill, and so I'm grateful for that.
So, would you like to see the junior bill process continue in the future?
I would, what I would like to have some discussions about it over the interim process. I think that would be pretty helpful. The capital outlay and the junior bill process is so fast. It happens. You have just a few days to like make your decisions. And so now, of course, now I'm thinking about what programs, could be funded. I don't know what it's going to look like, if we're going to have any money for junior at all next year. I don't know what the capital outlay budget is going to look like. We don't know that until that budget is built and we know what's coming in and what's going out. But I will say that the process is really truncated. And now that I know more, and should I get reelected, I want to have conversations with my acequias in the district so that we can really figure out what's important, what's coming down the pike, with my community centers, with the mutual domestics, all the people who are asking for money. I'd like to be in on those conversations beforehand, because it seems a little bit, I think there needs to be some reform on capital outlay for sure. I got $200 million worth of requests. I was able to support 1.8 million of that. So what's happening with those other, those agencies and those acequias and mutual domestics that need that money? How are they getting access to that? I'd like to see a little more work on our state agencies helping those political subdivisions through, in a variety of ways to tap into money that they can't get through capital outlay. So that's just my plug for, we've got big infrastructure money coming down the pipe. We need to figure out how we can get our local political subdivisions the support they need to do the work they need to do in community.
I mean, I think it's easy to understand how someone could view both the capital outlay and the junior money as sort of pork, where you're, paying off your constituents or your allies. But I mean, there's another way to look at it, and that is who knows best the needs of their community, theoretically anyway, than their elected representative. And as
Right.
you're saying, if the process was more stable and consistent so that you knew what was coming, you would be able to have those kinds of conversations with your constituents, which would be
Right.
invaluable. And then those funds could be doing some really remarkable things. They already do
Right.
some pretty
Right.
remarkable things.
Right. And if I could do this full time or even part time, I'd be able to meet with, a group of us psychics and say, okay, I found some money somewhere else. You need to apply for this grant in this way. And well, what's happening in rural communities, especially in my district, is that we just lack the capacity. We don't have someone who's writing grants. We have a couple of grant writers, and those folks are so busy. They're tackling all the other needs. So, I'd love to have a different system so that we could actually be doing the work of of constituent services and supporting and building capacity in our communities.
I wish I was 20 years younger because I made my
No,
career
me
writing.
too.
Well, I made my career writing state and federal grants and was very good at it and would love to be able to plug in. There's so many people out there, organizations that need grant writing help.
Absolutely.
I'm past my prime. Um, anyway, so what are the values and principles that you use to guide you in determining what you're going to support and what you're going to oppose?
That's a beautiful question. Is it fair? So, is there equity? Um, is there capacity to get this program, supported, in the short term and the long term? Um, those are the things I think that guide my decisions. I learned more about capital outlay after the process ended than before. So it's in the sort of aftermath after the budget's been signed and approved by the governor, and as the money is going out the door, that I now better understand what those needs are. Two of my capital outlay projects were vetoed by the governor because they were under $10,000, which I think was pretty. Not That's not junior, that's capital. And I think that was unfortunate, because I'd had conversations with those folks, and I kind of had heard that was a possibility, that capital projects that were under 10 would get vetoed, but that's what they needed, right? They needed a $6,500 excavator part. They needed $6,500 or $6,000 to pave this community center. That's what the quote was. That's what they asked for. They didn't want to go over, and so that's unfortunate that there was sort of it was a waste. If they'd asked for more, they probably would have gotten it. And I think that's problematic, right? There's got to be a different way for that. Another pot of money that we have, because we certainly have a good chunk of coin right now.
Yes, we do. So you're being challenged in the primary, I believe. Who is your opponent and why should District 46 voters choose you as their rep?
I am being challenged. My opponent's name is Florence Mira. She's a lovely, very kind woman. I've done this now for 2 years. I won with a pretty big margin in 2020, and I felt pretty confident going into these two sessions that I have the support of the community. I learned a lot. I spent a lot of time kind of understanding this system, and I think in some ways being pretty successful through the system. And and I love this job. So I hope that folks support me in this upcoming election. I'm surprised that I have a primary opponent, but I'm going to give it all I've got. I think I think the 2 years I've invested in it, though, is really, it would be a shame to lose that momentum.
Okay, I agree. I agree. I know that none of these issues have been framed as bills for 2023 yet, but you are quite familiar with most of these issues, and voters will want to know where you stand. So
Mhm.
let's do a quick rundown on some bills that will most certainly reappear in 2023. as I list off each bill, if you can tell the audience you support it, strongly support it, need more information, or tend to oppose. And then after we get through the list, we'll circle back and go into more depth on a couple of them. All right, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, public bank.
I need more info.
Okay, Health Security Act.
Support. Strong support.
Hydrogen hub.
Oh, I know it's not your answer, but highly complicated.
Yeah, it is highly complicated. Public power study.
I have need more info. Probably need tend to oppose. Is that it?
Tend to oppose. Okay.
Yeah. But we
Universal
should go back to it. We have to go back to
universal
that one.
basic income study.
Oh, I am supportive.
Okay. Green amendment.
Need more info.
Affordable housing
Support.
development.
Absolutely support. No question.
Land trust. You got to figure that's coming. Tax credits for electric vehicles and rooftop solar.
Strongly support.
Full funding for the New Mexico Environment Department to allow for closer monitoring of gas.
No question. Support plus.
Full funding for water planning, management, and projects.
Full support.
Okay, so let's circle back. What are some of
Yeah.
your questions or concerns about public bank?
Well, I've had lots of conversations with folks here in my district, with folks at NMFA. I mean, I appreciate and understand the need for a public bank. I do think that right now we have an institution that can do a lot of the work that the public bank that a public bank wants to do, and that's the New Mexico Finance Authority. So that's where I am on it. I'm open always to learning more, but I think that we've got a pretty remarkable institution that could, with some legislative tweaks, do the things that the public bank advocates want. But I'm open
Yeah, it's very
to
interesting.
learning
Another
more.
legislator mentioned the NMFA, and then I was speaking with Speaker Egolf, and he said that it is the most efficient government office in the state, period. And
Yeah.
so they, I know that the public banking people are in conversation with NMFA to talk about ways that they can extend the work that the NMFA.
I'm really grateful to hear that. I didn't sit on the committee as a voting member, but I was on the New Mexico Finance Authority Oversight Committee as an advisory member. And I went to a number of, that was really like one of my favorite committees, because it actually showed me how we spend our money in this state. Right, money that goes to various agencies and pots of and programs. And NMFA is helping that money move into community through loans, or sometimes through grants, mostly through loans. And I learned a lot about how the money is flowing in and out of our state. And I think Marquita is an incredible CEO. I have a good friend who works there as well, sort of really who has helped to reform that agency. So I was really grateful. That was probably, I love the water committee and economic development, but I really, really loved going to those NMFA meetings because I learned a lot about how government's working.
Okay. So what about the public power study? You were reserved about that.
Yeah, I did sign on to that, and then I had some conversations with some unions that gave me a little bit of pause on what that would look like, and I feel like I need to learn a bit more about it to
Well,
better understand.
I'm on the steering committee for the public power initiative.
Why don't you tell me more about it later?
Well, and the unions definitely did have a knee-jerk reaction, and we're working on strategies to try and allay their concerns, because most of it is around the fact that if we transition to public power, that means the likely limitation on our reliance on gas and oil, and that many of the unions are employed there. And so they were afraid that their working contracts and stuff would be abrogated. So they had a legitimate concern, but
Right.
we have some answers for their concerns. So,
Good, good. And I'd like to hear those as well.
okay. So let's shift gears a little bit and look at the global efforts or non-efforts to address climate change. The IPCC has come out with yet another bleak report and each report is bleaker than the next. And yet in New Mexico, the effort to try it, I mean, we are a major contributor to the climate change problem by virtue of all of our drilling in the Permian Basin and in northwest New Mexico. And yet, with 30 to 40% of our revenue dependent on those operations, it's not as if we can just flip the switch that easily. But what do you see a path where the state can start to figure out how to prioritize our revenues and diversify our revenues so that it's possible to eventually wean ourselves of our reliance on gas and oil?
I think it's a long, windy, complicated path, but it's a path that we have to take as quickly as possible. I'm heartened by the revenues that are coming in for after the legalization of recreational cannabis. I think that is one path. It's not enough. But it's going to be feeding our budget a little bit more. I think if we are fully funding the environment department to do the work they need to do on you know on mitigating these orphan wells, on really looking at and and putting the pressure on oil and gas companies on fixing their leaks. I think that's one thing that we need to do, and I feel like the oil companies are making lots of profits, and they need to they need to pay and make sure that they're cleaning up their mess. I know that that's not the economic model, but it's something that needs to happen so that if they want to operate here, we need to make sure that they're operating as cleanly as possible. I mean, I do see that the oil and gas companies know that renewables must be part of the portfolio as quickly as possible. So I'm hoping that we can provide some incentives for renewables, tax credits and things like that. I think investing in energy efficiency is an economic driver as well. That's actually the fastest growing sort of job creation in the energy industry is energy efficiency. I think we have to follow all those pathways, and I'm going to also talk about the fact that our land grant permanent fund is at, I think, 25 billion, something like that, right? It's huge, right? So we need to think about the money that we have right now and how we can pull some of that at the right times. Like, yes, for early childhood, yes, for K through 5, but could we use some of that in a creative way for energy efficiency and for renewables? There's also the stuff that's like smaller, but I think has an impact, building codes for both commercial buildings and houses, credits for electric vehicles, those kinds of things. I think we need to do all of it right now, and really start investing in our people in New Mexico. I'm not an economist, I'm a land and water advocate. I'm learning as much as I can so that I can, contribute to this conversation about how we can diversify our economy. And I look at where we are in our district. I look at the potential. I'm looking at the mountains right now and thinking at any moment we could have a major fire, truly. So what happens when we've devastated our tourism economy in the north? That brings millions and millions of dollars to the whole state, right? So we need to be thinking about, regional economies that support, the rest of the state's economy, and really thinking about how we help our oil and gas companies that are contributing to our budget get cleaner and get more efficient and clean up the messes that they made.
Well, I would use the word force rather than help, because I don't know that they,
Right. Okay. That's probably a good idea.
they're probably not that interested in that kind of help. But
Yeah.
what kind of advocacy strategies are most effective with you, and do you think work most effectively with the legislature in general? In other words, for people like our listeners, if they want to have
Yeah.
impact, what's the best way to do that?
Well, I will tell you that the best way is to have some, conversations throughout the year and building a relationship, by going to committee meetings, getting to know us, um, really like explaining things calmly before the fury of the session. Like, I just talked to somebody a few days ago, actually yesterday, who said, I called you during the session and you never called me back. And I was like, oh my God. Like I want you to know I have a stack of calls that come in during the session that are very hard to answer. And actually I don't even remember this person calling. I don't think I even saw the little notepad. So, having a conversation during the session is really, really hard. We're so stressed out. We have our own bills. We're fighting bad bills. We're trying to promote good bills that are not our bills, and we're sitting in committees and then going to the next one and then going to the floor and coming back. And it's just too much. Of course, grabbing us during, my first session, I wasn't even in the building for, more than 6 or 7 days in that 60-day session, maybe 10 days. So it was all Zoom. It was actually easier for me to manage my schedule when I was at home. But this 30-day session was completely bonkers. So I'm hoping that we can develop relationships before we go into that session, so that it's easier to have contact. I'm not saying don't call. You have to do that. You have to call. You have to send an email. But I think that if you can think about doing that before the session begins, it's easier to have those conversations during the session.
Are you listening, retake people? That is exactly our strategy. So thank you, Kristina.
Cool. Yeah. Call me now. Well,
If you could
really.
be a chair of any committee, what would it be and why?
Oh my goodness. I wish I could be co-chairs with Chair McQueen on energy. I love that committee. I don't want him to listen and think that I'm trying to take over, because I'm absolutely not. He's a brilliant, brilliant chair. But I do love that committee. Oh gosh, I'm gonna not answer any more of that question. But I love that committee.
I didn't realize that when I framed that question, because I've asked others, that it was putting them in a rough spot, because they might want a committee of a colleague, and you handle that artfully. So if you had here's another one that you're going to probably want to punt on. If you could look into your crystal ball, who do you see emerging as the next Speaker of the House?
Absolutely punting.
Wasn't saying who you were for, but you probably have some thoughts on that.
I think we have some really great leaders in the House right now, and there's great opportunity. I love the work that Majority Leader Javier Martinez is doing. He's incredible.
Yeah.
And that we've got some other incredible leaders. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So we have to close the show out. So I want to thank you for taking the time to do the interview, Kristina. Can you tell our listeners where they can get more information about your campaign and how they can support your candidacy?
I would love your help. I think there are some folks who are already helping, so thank you. Go to my website, Ortez4nm.com. You'll find ways to volunteer there. We're walking, we're calling, we're putting signs up. And, walking and calling is really the way what we're doing now. So please go to the website and get more information. We'd love your support. Come up to Taos. It's a beautiful time of year to meet the lovely folks in this county.
Well, Roxanne and I are going to be up there in June, so maybe we'll take a day to do some canvassing for you.
That'd be fantastic.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Paul.
To all my listeners, stay safe and healthy, and please do stay engaged and active. It's the only way we fix this mess. We'll be back next week. And next week, let me think, who am I talking to? I'm talking with, I don't know who I'm talking with. Better get a guest, but it'll be a good show. All right. Talk to you next week, folks.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.